is Rory. I am kicking off another edition of Breaking Brains, Building Hearts with Chris McAllister to my left and Brett Burchard, the foundation of our team. Welcome, Brett.
Got the inverted pyramid going.
I love it. I love it. All right, man. So we're back and we're talking about lessons in leadership and things that grabbed us this week. And Chris, you used the word new several times in talking about you on the air today, man. Enlighten us. What's going on?
Well, I had a big mental awareness. I'm curious if this resonates with you guys at all. This weekend, maybe it was Friday, but I just feel like I hadn't been really bringing the fullness of my energy and creativity and will to bear. I mean, there are people that react to reality. There are people that say life isn't fair and try to check out a reality. And then there are people that create a reality, and not to be too hyper cliche about it, but that is, that's where we want to be. We want to be, and these are woo words, but bringing a vision into a reality that didn't exist. And so I do all I can for physical energy, right? And my physical energy has felt great. You could think about it this way. It's the endorphins or no, the epinephrine, which is the motivation, the serotonin, the calmness, the dopamine, which is the stimulation. Like I have felt all of those and the steps I take to get those in place, but my psychological energy has felt off. And so once I was able to separate that in my mind, and it's not anything that I haven't worked on before, but once I was able to separate that in my mind and go, okay, there's physical energy and there's psychological energy. I don't know, the nuance of that really unblocked a deeper awareness, a deeper processing to start paying attention to. I can take steps for physical energy, but where's my psychological energy blocked? Why am I not able to bring a full throttled expression of my will into this? And so, yeah, once that kind of clicked in, there's a lot to be decided on and a lot of things to advance into is the stuff we're talking about for 2021. But once that clicked in, a lot of things that I need to just progress through was able to just fly through it. Like, oh, I need to do this here and then this and this and this and this. And actually had results come about from it yesterday. So we talk about this idea about what it means to move forward even when the circumstances aren't firing you up. And did that. And yesterday was a really good day. But it wasn't where I'm at right now is where I was all weekend, not because of the results from yesterday. Instead, where I am right now gave me the courage and clarity for what to do yesterday that brought about the results. So too much, but good. Too much to handle.
How are psychological energy and physical energy connected? Does one rely on the other? Does one stimulate the other? How do they interplay?
Yeah, so this is what I love about our format in this show is we're working through the stuff we're learning. And for me, it's just going, man, there were days where what I do for the physical energy to be constant throughout the day, I was still doing, but feeling a little bit of not anything from a malaise to a despair. And it just kind of would settle in a little bit on me. So I could feel like I had energy. I could go upstairs, hang out with the kids, laugh, and I would start to get a flow back. But psychologically something was off. And so this is all happening for me at the edges. And obviously I'll find way better ways to describe it as we talk through it now. You guys ask questions, push back against it. 6 months from now, we could explain it like a tight concept. But for me, the easiest way to explain it is I have energy physically, but psychologically, it's like I've got handcuffs on. So help me say it clearer than that, because I don't know. I mean, I'm saying this is all happening at the edge of my brain, and it may just be a new way to describe something we've talked about a number of times, and we're just turning an angle to the jewel, and that that is what I needed that helped me color it in.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think, Brett? What comes to mind when you ask the question?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about in the sports world, in coaching and developing teams and players. You're talking a lot about toughness and how you develop toughness, and it's really an old school method where you work crazy hard, right? You get them in crazy shape. You go in your practices. I remember we'd come back from Christmas break, and when I was playing college basketball, and you'd walk in the gym for that first practice after maybe a week off of Christmas break. You've been home feasting with the family, sitting on the couch, and there are trash cans set up at every corner of the court. It was basically a signal like this practice is going to be hell, and you probably throw up. And if you don't throw up, you didn't go hard enough. And there's this idea in coaching or in sports where you're going to develop toughness by superior conditioning or physical activity. We're going to run 2 miles a day, even though you don't run 2 miles in a basketball game. Like, what's the correlation? What's the reason? And there is this piece of it where physical conditioning can help you think clearly when you get tired, or delay fatigue, so your mind is still operating. But it's different than developing mental toughness. Mental toughness would be separating the disappointment from results, so you can make the next right play, so you don't shut down mentally. But that's where I'm going, where you're talking about physical energy, psychological energy, and in sports world, where physical conditioning may be different than psychological or mental conditioning. And we get it confused when we're trying to develop the physical instead of developing the mental, or developing the physical thinking we're developing the mental, when it's really two separate things.
That's wild. Yeah, I think of the physical developing the mental, because the physical is taxing you and your mind just says, I want to quit. And it's testing you to stay focused and stick with it. Is there something beyond that?
Right. I think go ahead, Brett.
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah. Go ahead.
What Brett just said, and then what you just asked, Jimmy, brought this to mind. There was a moment, so this would have been in like 2009, an organization I was leading that wasn't turning around, and I was experiencing just so much pain from it. And I had never had that happen before. Like, I put energy into the organization and then it would develop, grow, advance, change, whatever. And I remember like reaching this point where, okay, and I wouldn't have put it in these terms at that time, but the fear of people saying I killed that organization at least went to 49% or less. And it was a psychological shift. And I remember exactly the road that I like crossed when it happened, because it was all just kind of unfolding in my mind while I was driving, and I was driving this road home and crossed this one road. And I remember thinking, if I'm the last one to lock the door and everybody the rest of my life thinks I killed this, so what? But nothing's going to be served by me not going at it with everything I've got. And thankfully that story has the ending of it did turn around, it did take off, and it went great. I think for me, so much has changed in the last 6 or 7 months that something clicked in just a full commitment, burn the boats to the fuller vision of what's playing out, what we can do for teams with GMI, what we do for, I just think the fullness of that just really hit me. And it was just filling that space and going, okay, let's freaking go. Let's go. And it's brought about a new courage, tenacity, intensity, fearlessness that I mean, I could just see it all day yesterday. And that like we can get concrete and scientific about this in some ways, but science can't explain everything. And that's when you have the faith that moves a mountain. Like you physically are showing up, psychologically showing up in such a way that you feel like you can be like, nope, I'm going to move that over there. I'm going to move that over there. Let's go. And that's what it feels like. Now there's a part of me that's like, don't say out loud. You're gonna ruin it. Or what if you don't feel that way? But I have been through this before. And so all I'm doing now, I think, is putting new words to that process. So that's my best take on it.
Yeah.
The trash cans are out. I love that visual. And I might throw up and it might hurt, but and that's exactly like 2015 when I went in this full time. It was like, yeah, let's go. I remember a guy introduced me by email and just, I was very direct, but still I have a style that's direct, but yet cozy. I was me in the email, and the other guy was like, man, I would have just taken more time with that, tried to get a few more exchanges back and forth. And there are times to do that, but it's almost like when you're in that spot, you just know this is a time to let the banter go. This is a time to go all in. It's Harry Potter's potion. If y'all have seen the Harry Potter movies where he takes the potion, the good luck potion. You know what I'm talking about, Jimmy?
I actually read Harry Potter for the first time this summer.
All of them?
No, just one.
It's still crazy, man. That's cool. That's really cool. She's a wizard to write those books. All she did to draw from so many different things, psychology, alchemy, anyway. Yeah. But Jimmy, have you seen the movies?
I have over and over again with my kids. Yeah, it's great.
I figured. Yeah. So the part where he takes the potion, he's like, I'm going to go to Hagrid's. I just have a good feeling about it.
Is that so? I guess what I'm thinking though, my man, is what I want to do for our listeners is I want to help them kind of like think about a process. Like, it can for an individual who's making their way in the world, right, and carving their path, Chris. I mean, this idea of recognizing that mental lag, it can be daunting, right? And for the individual making their way, because you're creating something from scratch, right? If as a member of a team, if I have a mental lag, I feel like I leave my house, get in my car. I feel like as long as I can make it into the facility and get dressed for practice, my teammates will lift me up because I'm going to go through the same. After all, I'm playing the same game I played for since I was 5, right? So, I think there are probably athletes, leaders that have constructs around them that can help them recognize those mental lags and work through them. But I'm wondering, what does an individual do? How does an individual do that when they don't have maybe those constructs around them or those team members around them to find their way out of that malaise? Is that what you experienced?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, and I just have to note for our listeners that, Jimmy, when you started talking, our listeners got cut in half. That sounds like a lot, and
that'd be a lesson, man.
That was just
question.
Too much fun to have. No, and now it'll happen to me. No, the thing that I would best describe this is, the last 7 or 8 weeks, I feel like there were days I was moving at 100% capacity, psychological energy. But more often than not, I was moving at like 70%. And some days I'd have 30 and 40%. 5 hours pass, you don't know what you've gotten done. Rather than like an hour pass yesterday and feeling like, I moved so much forward. So first and foremost, you have to recognize that there are different states. And so we can break down the physical and psychological. You've got to do what you've got to do to have the physical ready and on demand, which does feed into the psychological. So first, recognize that there are different states. Second, don't shame yourself. things ebb and flow. The point isn't to always be like where I am now. The point is to figure out the new territory that you're stepping into, because if we're growing and expanding, we're stepping into new territory, and then fill and possess that space with this energy and this focus. It's not just an alpha male like dominating energy. It's just it's a confidence of power. It's a certainty of place, not a certainty of results. And so I think so acknowledging that there are different states, you're going to experience this in degrees, not shaming yourself if you're not where you want to be, but instead, third, let that be an encouragement and a reminder that capacity changes. My capacity to move with an intentionality and a focus and an effectiveness now is different than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right? You move through these phases. But what I think, and I've heard other people talk about this, until there's a point of commitment where it's like you burn the boats and go in on that thing, whatever that thing is, there's a part of you that just holds back. And I don't think I knew I was holding back 6 or 7 weeks ago. So I'm not going to shame myself, but reflecting on where I am now, I was holding back. It's just because the awareness increased. And as the awareness increased, I can cooperate with it, and I cooperate with it. Now, if I stop cooperating with it, then I will be missing the moment. Then I will be not capitalizing on what's happening. And you can't control when these happen, but when these happen and you get to that next level, and there's a way that I visualize this, you feel like you're drawing your willpower out of yourself and putting it into that thing, whatever that is. And what we don't, there was a book, Gerald May, I think it was, he talks about like the difference between willfulness and willingness. I'm not talking about willfulness where you force and you're rigid and you're hype and you're trying to make it all happen. You're not cooperating with what's unfolding. I'm talking about a willingness that you're just fully accepting your reality. You're fully committing to it. And you're saying, let's create out of this. Let's make happen out of this. But it is still an expression of the will. And when I think about the way that most people are reacting, you look at how people use social media, they react, or they try to be provocative to gain a following. But the real, master move is that you manifest a will. Steve Jobs, reality distortion field, except with healthy, kind, caring leadership. Not that I'm saying he wasn't, I just don't know him, right, or didn't know him.
That's good. I think about, and what I hear a little bit coming from you, Chris, is like our biggest fight every day, our biggest challenge every day, not to make X number of sales calls, not to write X number of emails, not to win so many meetings or accomplish so many goals. Like our biggest fight every day is to show up with our best self. And to approach that way, where can you tap into an energy psychologically, physically, emotionally that brings your best self, because the best thing we can do for anybody is bring our best self to the moment. That's what we have. That's the best thing we have to offer. And so I always position it in my mind is that's my biggest fight every day is, can I bring my best self? And then maturity is not that I'm always at my top game and I never fall off of that. Maturity, like you were saying, Chris, is the awareness to know where you're at, when you got knocked off balance, and then how quickly can you create that new reality or get back into flow or get back into your groove, or to upgrade, to know, hey, what I was doing isn't working anymore. Now it's time to upgrade, and your ability to keep iterating and evolving and growing to what is your new best self as you learn and expand. But as you're talking about psychological energy, physical energy, what is you at your best, and how do you bring your best every day?
Well, and I think for me, even while we're talking about this, what I'm realizing is, so I have this standing desk, And sometimes I stand, sometimes I sit, but for like the last 6 or 7 weeks, I've only sat. And then Friday, I was like, I'm going to put my desk back up, and I didn't like consciously think through that, but put it up, and I'll take it. I can sit and stand as I want, but I feel different when I stand. And in April and May, I was standing a ton. And in June a lot, and I think what happened is I didn't move backward. And that's the thing that people don't get. I was getting into new territory. I was swirling in a lot of different waters, trying to make sense of things and organize things in my brain and find a way forward. But you can't do that through just mental striving. You don't rationally get there step by step. Linear thinking doesn't deliver breakthroughs. You leap into a new structure, a new box. And so the way I think about it is lately is it's all boxes, and linear thinking improves my existence in the current box that I'm in. But when I'm getting into a new box, or I'm in between boxes, and we can think about boxes just as the worldview, the way we're making sense of our work, the way we're getting activated, the way that we're making meaning, the way that we're figuring out our place and in the world and where we are and what's happening in our circumstances. And so for me, when I'm in between the box, that it's almost like there's a formlessness. There's a lot of swirl. And as the next box emerges and I'm able to step into that, that's what's really exciting. And, you think about, there's actually an argument in academic circles about how does science break through? Does it break through step by step, which is like Karl Popper's thinking, who really influenced George Soros? And there's a lot of reasons why George Soros acts the way that he does. Or Charles Kuhn, who said scientific breakthrough only comes because we get into a completely new way of thinking. And then all the experiments happen in that new way of thinking. And then at some point they become wrong because a new box emerges. So Copernicus is like, we don't go around the earth. We go around the sun. He leapt into a new box. And so I think for people that might be listening, when the box you're in isn't working, it's not delivering the results, it's not taking you towards deeper meaning, satisfaction, or helping you move mountains, then you're going to have an in-between time, and then a new box will emerge. But improvement in a linear, incremental way is great when you're in the box. But leaping has to happen when you're at the edge of that box. Is that too conceptual or abstracted? Does that make sense at all?
It does make sense to me. My question for you, Chris, is, so then these like jumping from psychological boxes in worldviews or new ways of thinking, I would ask, how do physical changes either assist that or, cement those new boxes? So you jump from a new psychological box and now you're going to make physical changes to accelerate that or cement it or cooperate with it. All right, I'm going to make this change psychologically, and now I'm going to change my workspace, or I'm going to change my diet, or whatever it might be physically that matches or accelerates psychological change. Does that make sense?
Totally. A practical implication of that is right out here. I have this like workout bar. You could do push-ups, pull-ups, whatever, and I haven't been doing them lately. And then I did, and I did. It wasn't like I got to shame myself into doing it. It was like, oh, let's go do some. And I go upstairs, and my wife was like, "Dang, no, not that fast." But
Mental.
what's that, Jimmy?
You just painted that mental picture, man. It made you feel good. Mental strength.
But this is the thing that you don't see a lot of people do, Brett. So I think it's fascinating you asked this, is they just kind of find that cruising altitude for their physicality and lock in, whatever that is. So like I haven't ate breakfast or lunch hardly at all for the last 2 years. That's what served me amazing. It works for me. It doesn't work for everybody else. I've loved it. I just love that so much, but maybe that'll change because now this new box, and I'll find that I'll bring lunch back in, or any number of things. And so, yeah, I think that this is weird, and I'm okay saying this on air because people are going to misjudge you no matter what. I can tell you this part of this shift that's been occurring, I have never loved steak so much in my life, ever. Like it tastes like I'm eating the food of the gods. It's all I want to eat. And a lot of veggies. I love veggies too, but just steak and a ton of veggies, And so Brandy will be like, talking about dinner. I'm like, so what are we having for dinner? And I'm trying to calculate how I can go get a steak real quick. So I think that's been true to my life. When I was talking about turning that organization around, I made some dietary changes at that time. I made some other physical changes at that time. I started running and, can go on and on. So I do think part of that shows up in a fun, unique way. And, I know, Jimmy, you worked out a ton when you were younger, and you've kind of continued to take care of yourself. How have you seen a big shift in your box show up in a big shift in physicality, if it has, or diet?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, I think the easy answer to what Brett asked is this idea, and what I think you pointed to, this idea of awareness, right? We get into this malaise or this comfort zone. I think back to those moments in my life. There was a point in time when I didn't go to the dentist for 2 years. Was it conscious? No, I just forgot. I just friggin', could you imagine that? I mean, there are points in my life where I just became disconnected, unaware of stuff around me. And yeah, there was a point in time when, after I was married, I grew up in the restaurant business. So, my standard for happiness is a 12-inch platter for dinner every night and fill it, right? And you could put a pound of pasta on that baby. So yeah, for many years, I forgot about working out and just ate my way to, bliss until I kind of woke up. So yeah, I think we all go through those situations, but I think what I hear you saying is that, if we want to strive to perform at the edge of our abilities, or just explore our potential, it's not just, you can't just focus on one place. You have to be balanced.
Yeah.
And I think what happened to you is this idea of, it's all connected. That mental strength is connected to that physical strength. And I think the third component, a lot of people think about as that spiritual strength, the third leg of the stool, not so much necessarily religious or whatever it is, but just this idea of connectedness and core values and the things that matter most to me. And, that allows me to identify the tribe or the group or the community that I want to be around and also serve. So, paying attention to all those things, I think, makes a lot of sense. And then just asking the question, why? I think a lot of what we're talking about here is this idea of, well, why do I want to work out? Is it because I want to look good in a dress, or look good to other people so that when they judge me, I don't feel bad about myself? Or is it because we're focused on health? That's maybe a little bit deeper and more meaningful to us long term, right? So thinking about being stuck, the mental malaise, identifying it, like I haven't been to the dentist, identifying it, and then finding your way out of it, having that mechanism to find your way out of it. And it sounds like what you did was you just kind of explored all the different areas that got you to where you are, that perhaps you weren't executing fully. Where did I drop the ball? Where did I what about? And then once you started kind of lining those things up, or thinking about lining those things up, all of a sudden you got back into that sweet spot, into that zone that helped you identify that next box and lift you to that next level.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll tell you that, even as we're talking about this, and what you said, Jimmy, took me back to a moment at like 22, 24, when I left and had no idea of what was next. I just knew I was supposed to leave the organization I was in. And like, this is crazy. I remembered that this is what we need to do. We got to go. My wife at the time was probably 2 months away from delivering our first child. All the leaders came over to our house because they were just like concerned for the organization, concerned for us. Like, what do you need? Do you want more money? What is it? Stay. I was like, I can't explain this. I just know we're supposed to go. Well, where are you going? Nowhere. I have nothing to do. I have nothing to, there's no offer that's taking me away. I'm not running to something, and I'm not running from this. I just know we're supposed to go. So we brought our daughter home to me not having any job. And we had just moved into a new house that we had built. And we lived there about a month. And I remember like having the U-Haul truck in the driveway and knowing there were like 4 or 5 places we could go. And one of them was where we ended up going. My mother-in-law's, her husband had passed away, and as a widow, just a lot of things about that made sense. So we went there. And so like that decision was verified as the right decision through literally like a life-saving circumstance with my daughter, and that's a whole nother story. But the thing that, what we do is we get so attached to our current reality. Now, when I was back then and I went into nothing after that, what did I do while I was in between boxes? I learned and I created. Like when you don't know what to do, learn and create, learn and make, learn and be prolific, whatever that looks like for you in your world. And what I've been doing the last like month and a half-ish is just 2 months, just absorbing so much like a sponge, just so much. And I've been prolific, but I didn't have a few pieces in place that needed to be in place that I didn't even know were missing. They just had to lock in. And then once they lock in, it's like, let's freaking go. That's the direction we've got to go. And I think that, and this is an important point to make, as you go through this multiple times, when I was doing this at 24, it was like trying to get a Ford 2-seater truck a little bit more dialed in, right? And by the time I'm 62, when I'm going through this process, it'll be like getting an F1 engine dialed in. So whatever that is in between now, the process changes. My awareness of the fine tuning is even deeper. So what might feel a little bit restrictive or like I'm not moving at 100%, a month ago, that would have blown the mind of Chris 20 years ago at
Right.
how effective and what he's getting, So people have to see the dynamic movement of that over time. Yeah. Did that bring up any new questions or insights? Because I feel like we're just walking through something that is at the edge of being able to describe with language.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of Brett here. I'd like Brett's opinion on this, but what I'm sensing is that when you don't know what to do something. And so for you, this idea of learning, going out, exploring, asking questions, start, whatever it is, do something. And it's that kind of activity that creates that motion, and that motion that gives you the opportunity to allow everything to fall into place, to allow you to recognize that next step, take it and go. And I think for me, that's what I took out of what you said, because that has been something really profound for me in my life. When you don't know what to do something. Make investments, even if you're not sure what those investments are going to create for you, or if you can connect the dots, go do it. The worst thing you can do is nothing. The worst thing you can do is just sit there and ruminate.
I would say do something, but don't do something that is going to get you committed to letting a lot of people down. Like hold back on making big commitments, because like that's the winter season of it. You're exploring the tree trunk, and things have felt very formless for me, not in a scary way the last couple of months, but in a way of like, whoa, the swirling open consciousness as you're in between boxes. And then the next box starts to show up and you're like, oh yeah,
so
here we go.
So that's back to burning the boats. Don't commit to burning the boats when you're in that, in the winter season.
Right? Yeah, unless something really makes it clear. And I have had a few, well, no, I would say they usually come in the summer. It's like, it's the times I've stepped away from things when people have said, you're crazy, what are you doing? It's when it got its best. but I knew there was something else calling. And it's always been something that took me beyond myself at that point. So it took me to greater impact, greater joy, greater meaning, whatever, and greater responsibility and greater pain. You know, anybody listening to this, grow or die, but that doesn't always feel good to grow.
Yeah. I'm hearing, Chris, you're talking about, you referenced a situation where you chose to leave somewhere with nowhere else to go, and resonated with me, but in a different way, because so many people right now are getting pushed out of where they were, not by their own choice. And you get pushed out into this wilderness or this winter season unexpectedly, and then trying to navigate where you go from there. And the natural tendency is to like scratch and claw to get back to where we were in some situation. When instead of, that's the willingness versus willfulness you talked about, this willfulness to hang on to what we're losing, getting pushed away from, rather than this willingness to cooperate with the energy that's pushing us out and then into somewhere else. And it's scary. It's, it's unknown. And you're not sure where to go next, but where you're talking about, Chris, is just learn and create, and just keep iterating that until something sticks. I think what you were saying, Jimmy, all the dots are connecting for me right now, but about, just do something. A truck is stuck in the mud in a ditch. You're not so concerned about like steering it back onto the road. You're just trying to get some momentum, right? Just get that thing moving, and then we'll get it back on the road. So you get pushed out into the space rather than willfulness to hang on to where we're getting pushed away from, a willingness to cooperate with the momentum of where we're headed next, and then create a little momentum physically, psychologically, learn, create, learn and grow. And then the new path will emerge, and we can get back on track and start to thrive. I don't know if I took that all in the right direction, but
no, I love that analogy. I mean, and how do we talk to people when they're in the ditch versus trying to tell them, hey, 4 stores down, Gatorade's on sale for 50 cents off a bottle, right? Which is like terrible marketing.
It's good.
Jimmy, what's this bringing up for you?
Well, it's funny how things come full circle. So we talk a lot about this idea of, growth is the mastery of change. And so it sounds like a lot of what we're talking about is this path that you experienced, right? That helped to elevate your mastery of the change that you experienced. And when we think about it, we simplify it by talking about, when the change comes, you have a choice. You can either walk the path of complacency, which is where you're resisting your circumstances, or you can walk the path of curiosity, where you accept your circumstances. And you walk that path by asking questions, right? By discovering. You're actively searching. And then, of course, what you've described is as you walk that path of acceptance with a curious mind, you make decisions with clarity. You reach a point of clarity that allows you to take a step either out of to a new box or to some next step. When you're walking that path of resistance and complacency, that ultimately ends up leading you to making a decision in crisis, right? And then we can become victims. We can be conditioned to always kind of wait to be forced into a situation where we're moving and acting, and we become conditioned to be victims and blame our circumstances as we go through life. And I think what we're talking about here is that we're facing change, whether it's change of our own design or change that's thrust upon us. It's not easy to do, but the the optimum path is to start asking questions, start thinking about, does my future have to be on this path? Can it be another? Do I have to do this to be happy? Can I do something else? What really does make me happy? Could it be something else? Am I willing to kind of like just step into the unknown and be all about discovery at this point in my life? And by the way, yes, while we're having to pay the bills and all the things that have to occur while we're doing that. But for me, it's a simple way to kind of think of the world and think of that process. And that's what Brett brought up for me, kind of brought me back to an old bit of wisdom that I cultivated a few years ago based on life experiences.
That's awesome. And, I think for people listening or watching too, just to be reminded, personality and temperament. If you have a personality that has a harder time getting excited, committing yourself to that spring-like inspiration is scary, but necessary for you to overflow the confidence and empowerment that's going to help you advance. I think if you have a personality like mine, which is more excitable, the opposite is true. You have to pause. You have to consider. You have to just make sure it's not your enthusiasm running away. But once you have paused and considered and tested and picked apart, there's a time to go. And yeah, man, this has fired me up even more just talking about all this.
It's good. Good stuff.
Yeah. So what did we learn? Brett, what did we learn today, man?
What did you learn today, Jimmy?
You ought to be in sales, brother.
I learned from you, man.
Fantastic.
I learned from you.
Well, I think what's interesting is that a lot of our experiences are, like you said, Brett, they're reflective of what people around us are experiencing. And it's really interesting to start the conversation with an experience that Chris had in his personal and professional life, and then kind of expand that reality to the current news, which is from coast to coast here in the United States. I think every state is shutting down, maybe except for one since the last map that I saw. But so many of us are finding ourselves in positions where we're struggling with change that has been thrust upon us, or change that was, produced by our own device, and then struggling with that. And it's not just once a year or once in a while, but it's been happening now for the last several months. So I think it's interesting that our conversation around our struggle and exploring Chris's experience is one that can be expanded to everyone in this common experience that we all have of facing the unknown with regard to COVID and health issues and work issues, economic issues that are all coming down the path.
It's awesome.
Good stuff.
It's a function of leadership. You see the future, you get excited about it, you run towards it, and you tell people, you show people, you encourage people, you invite people, we can go there.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize this. At the end of the day, it's about finding that level of leadership within yourself to actually ask those tough questions and take those hard steps forward, do something, create that momentum, to get yourself out of that position of being stuck or the malaise that you were talking about, Chris.
Let's freaking go.
Get on that push-up bar, baby.
Yeah, I want to see some pull-ups.
All right, gang. Well, it is time to bring this to a close. A great conversation. Really, I thought authentic, heartfelt, vulnerable. Thank you, Chris, for kicking us off and taking us down this path. It was really, I thought, awesome today. This has been Breaking Brains, Building Hearts. Thank you for joining us. We do this every week. We'll see you next week, same time, right here. Take good care, everybody.